Welcome to AFL180, brought to you by Guru.com.au, where we're half as good. Big week this week in AFL. The Hawks and the Cats traded premiership favouritism after big wins, and the Melbourne Demons, well, they sunk to all new depths. And all the while, the Bump got straight into contention. Today, I've got with me Vova, who's a long-suffering St Kilda fan, and I've got Jono, who's proud to be a Hawthorn supporter, even though the colours aren't that great. How are you guys this week?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good this week. The Saints got a win against Carlton. Always love beating the Blues. It's been a torture history. All in all, pretty good week for me. Jono?
Yeah, look, happy after beating the Swans. Doesn't make up for last year's premiership loss, but happy to beat them, and look forward to hopefully another big win this week.
Mosh, I think there's a bit too much happiness in the room. How about your week, son?
I'm a neutral observer, so it doesn't really matter. Being a Melbourne supporter is tough, so you've got to look to the big games and not focus on Melbourne things. So I guess every week we're going to have a tipping segment where we select a bet on every single game. We select one each and we tally up the results. And last week we selected our bets, and it was a tough week, to say the least. Jono has hit the lead early on. He's very happy with himself there. But Vola, how did you go?
Oh, it was a tough week from a betting perspective. I think this is what happens when you tip against your own team, particularly when you tip against them by 40 plus. I think the footy gods got me, which is unfortunate, but I'll take the win over the bets any day.
So what we're doing is we're placing $10 on every single game, so $90 in a single round, and from the $90, Volvo got a payout of $39.80.
Tough loss, that one. Tough loss. 2
games you got a payout out of 9.
I don't even know where to go with it. I leave it to my betters to explain the betting gurus of the week.
Melbourne versus Gold Coast. Who picked Melbourne? I think I did.
That was me. I think Jono was the only one that actually tipped the Coasters.
Tipped the Suns, but only by 1 to 39. Didn't expect the Demons to be quite so bad.
So everyone lost that one. Now, Vola, out of your 2 wins, I think you had a really big one.
I did. I actually did. Which one was that, actually? You can tell we've come prepared. I picked the Kangas by 40 plus. I think that was a pretty big payout of $1.78. The other one that I got correct was the Dockers and Pies, with the Dockers coming through by under 39 points. I think I find it hard as a former Saints supporter to bet against Ross Lyon. Gun coach gets his team up and going. They were very undermanned, but came through. I thought it was a very impressive victory, and they got me the money in the end.
In terms of the big games of the round, we had Friday night was an absolute massive game. 2 unbeaten teams came up against each other, and Geelong really proved themselves to be the top team of the year so far. Who had Geelong?
Yeah, I took Geelong 1 to 39. Started the weekend on a high, and slowly dropped away from there.
Well, why'd you take Geelong, mate?
They're a better team. In my opinion, they're a better team. They're stronger across the ground, and I was proven right.
Very nice. What about the other big game, Hawthorn, Sydney?
I gotta say, I got that one completely wrong. Hawthorn wouldn't quite say showed Sydney up as pretenders, but they definitely showed there's a bit of a class gap between the two, at least at this stage of the season. There was a pretty amazing stat on the radio today that Hawthorn have been in front in 82% of the matches, 82% of the time in their matches, which is pretty incredible. So they've been, I'd say, along with Geelong, the dominant team of the year so far, and it was probably a mistake to tip against them in the end.
It looks like I was the only one that tipped correctly. I had Hawks 1 to 39. Payout $22.70. It's not bad at all.
Yeah, I tipped against my Hawks, which proved to be the wrong bet. But after losing in the grand final last year, it's always hard to back them again against the Swans.
And on the back of that, you picked against St Kilda.
Yeah. I don't really even
How did
know.
that go?
Don't even know where to go with that. I got to tell you, I think we've been overrating Carlton quite a bit. I've jumped right off the bandwagon. A bit of a front-running midfield. Don't have a key forward to speak of, so I think they struggle to do any damage up forward when they do get it. Pretty solid defense, but I just don't see them in the 8 at the end of the year. And was proven ultimately very wrong. I'm not going to be making the same mistake this week.
Not just wrong, but you had Blues 40 plus.
No confidence in my own team, disgraceful.
Speaking of key forwards, your man Nick Rewalt, career best form. Best start to a season for him from the number of goals kicked.
I gotta tell you, I don't know why everybody's so surprised. This kid, he's been a gun his whole career. Got injured in 2010, tore his hamstring off the bone, had knee problems, but every year he's been healthy, he's dominated the competition. I think him, Treadray and Buddy have been probably the preeminent key forwards of the decade. And he looks like he's continuing. He looks like just as good a Nick now as he did probably 5 or 6 years ago, which is pretty impressive.
No, agreed. Absolutely.
Just keeps burning them off. He just keeps running and running. He's like a midfielder that way. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I've got to say I absolutely love that game, Carlton St Kilda game. It was a war of attrition. Carlton had so many players go down. They had 1 or 2 fit guys on the bench, so their rotations were way down. And they also carried an extra tall into the game to try and cover row. And, it looked halfway through like St Kilda was going to win massively. And all of a sudden they still managed to pick up, the Carlton that is, managed to pick themselves up and get really, really close.
Well, I will say they've got a lot more heart than Melbourne have. It's hard to disagree with that. But they really should have been out of that game 3 quarters in. I think they played a very young Saints team that, one of the things that happened is that we ran them off their feet, but also just couldn't have the composure to put it away. So, good heart. I think Mick Malthouse coach teams always play that way, but not enough cattle at the Blues, I think.
I'm talking about Dream Team and Supercoach. A lot of people had this Wright kid from St Kilda who got absolutely smashed and got taken off the field. So that was an interesting one as well. We'll talk about that later when we discuss the bump. But I wanted to talk about the AFL conference system. So a lot of the AFL is considering this now. They want to... Well, some people want to go to a conference-style system like they have in the US for most of their major sports, where I guess what they're discussing right now is a 3-conference system, where, and it comes on the back of trying to even things up, where at the moment we've got playing some teams once, playing some teams twice, and it seems to be a bit uneven and it's not quite fair. So they're trying to even that up a little bit by... saying, all right, we're going to split it up into 3 conferences. There's going to be a Western Conference, so that's the Perth teams, Western Australia, Fremantle. You've got Adelaide and Port Adelaide, and I believe Melbourne and Western Bulldogs. Then you've got a Northern Conference, so you've got the 2 Queensland teams, you've got the 2 Sydney teams, you've got North Melbourne, and one more.
I don't think we need to get into the specific details.
Right,
but
and then they're all the powerhouse teams of Victoria together in the Victorian competition. So we're talking about Collingwood, Geelong, Hawthorn, Essendon, Richmond. And the idea is that you play everyone in your own conference twice, and you play outside of your conference once. I think it's still designed to be one ladder, as opposed to how they do it in basketball, where only a certain number go through from each, because it's 3 conferences. So it lowers the travel. And it's kind of a bit fairer, but you've got these imbalances.
I have to say,
what do you think?
I hate the idea.
Right.
I think it's a terrible idea. I think the NBA has been suffering from it for a while. Now, I don't know if they intend to take the conferences into the finals, but the NBA has been suffering from it just because you can never... If the 2 best teams are in the one conference, they don't play each other in the finals, which is a terrible idea. They have this same thing in the NFL, and I think one other point, it seems to me like a cash grab. I think they're trying to ensure that they maximise attendances. I
actually disagree. I think it's the other way. I don't think it'll get up because of the TV rights. Because the TV companies, they're going to be happy for to pay to see Hawthorn, Geelong, Essendon, Carlton, Richmond kind of all play each other twice, but Channel 7 in Melbourne, they're not going to give a stuff that West Coast, Freo, Adelaide, Port Adelaide, Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs are all going to pay each other twice. They're not going to want to show those games.
I don't know.
I actually don't think that from a TV rights perspective that they'll be interested in having this, because what happens is, at the moment you look at the teams that are up the top of the ladder, and you were mentioning that a lot of those are going to be in the one conference. So you're going to end up with teams that aren't as strong getting through to the finals. Teams that are stronger missing out on finals.
They won't necessarily get through to the finals because it's still going to be one ladder, not top two from each going through or anything like that.
Well, then you're in exactly the same boat as you're in now. You play a bunch of teams once, and you play a few teams twice. Like you're in the same boat that you're in now.
I think they're looking to maximise attendances at the matches. They know if they guarantee themselves 2, Hawthorn, Carlton games every year, it's going to be much better attendance than Hawthorn playing Freo.
But what's the point of having conferences then? Why not just say you're going to play these teams twice every year?
Mikey, you seem to be the only one for the idea.
I didn't say it was for the idea, I just introduced the topic. But by the way, the other team that's going north is St Kilda. So they've siphoned off all the kind of average Victorian teams that no one cares about.
Hey, we were...
our two teams. Yeah. And moved them off.
So if you're going to do conference...
Someone like Richmond this year, who's doing really well, is going to be dead last in the Victorian Conference.
I'd suggest if you're going to do conferences, not that I think conferences is a good idea, but you'd break it up into 2, and you'd have West Coast, Freo, Adelaide, Port Adelaide in one. You'd have Sydney, GWS, Brisbane and Gold Coast in the other. Yeah. And then within one of those conferences you'd have Essendon, Carlton, Richmond and Collingwood, who are all traditional rivals. The other one you'd have Geelong, Hawthorn and North, who I guess over the last 30 years have all developed a really strong rivalry. And then you'd squeeze Melbourne, Western Bulldogs, St Kilda into those conferences. You play everyone in your conference twice, and you play everyone outside your conference once. That's a total of 25 games, so you extend the season a little bit, reduce the pre-season.
But is there really a point for it, Jono? Like,
the pre-season comp stinks.
Yeah, well, no one wants it. And the current proposal is already for 24 games. So extending the season by 2 games and removing 2 weeks from the pre-season comp.
Yeah, but I think if you've got more teams in a conference and the top 4 from each conference go through to the finals, I think that's a fairer system than a proposed 3-conference competition where you have one ladder. It makes no sense.
I agree with that.
Yeah, look, I think in America it works really, really well because you've got so many teams over and it's quite an even area as well. Whereas in Australia, the geography is just totally different, where, especially in the AFL, where most of the teams are Victorian, they're from the same town. It doesn't really make sense to have them in separate conferences.
Well, why would you not rotate? We've got 18 teams in the competition. So, and the AFL wouldn't want to do this because they'd want to maximise that Essendon and Carlton and Essendon and Richmond and Essendon and Collingwood and Carlton all play each other twice every year to maximise your TV revenue, your attendance revenue and all those sorts of things. But everyone plays each other once, and then over the space of 3 years you rotate the team that you play twice.
Great idea. Unfortunately, the morons of AFL HQ probably never thought of that in a million years.
All right. Next thing I want to talk about is the bump. It's really come up this week. We've had a whole bunch of players, good players, rubbed out because of the bump. Any thoughts?
Yes, ridiculous. The Kelly bump on Goddard. Look, he was. He may have glanced him high, he deliberately hit him, yes, but every reason that they gave as to why Kelly got rubbed out contradicted all the reasons they gave as to why Lindsay Thomas didn't get rubbed out earlier in the season.
Yeah.
For his bump on Reed. He deliberately hit him, he was out of play, he got him in the head, even though it was incidental contact, and smashed the bloke's head in. Nothing. Kelly, glancing blow, if there was any contact at all to Goddard's head, and gets 2 weeks. And as I say, every reason that they gave for Kelly to be rubbed out contradicted all the reasons they gave for Lindsay Thomas not to be rubbed out.
Well, as usual, I disagree with my fellow columnist right here, or columnist, podcastist, I guess we'll say. I got to tell you, I don't enjoy the sniping of the ball. He wasn't in play. There was absolutely no reason to hit him. I don't think he was going to affect play. And we've seen enough of these concussion issues in the NFL that these guys...
I'm not necessarily saying he shouldn't have been rubbed out. What I'm saying is all the reasons that it's just inconsistent, and it's ridiculous that if Lindsay Thomas can get off, Kelly gets rubbed out.
So what are we debating here? We're debating the
I think
bump or the decision?
I think they wanted to get Lindsay Thomas off, and they made whatever excuses they needed to make at the time.
But it's inconsistent. It's
what
unfair. You don't know if you hit someone. It's a bit of a lottery. Like you really don't know from week to week whether what you have done is going to get you rubbed out for 1 to 3 weeks, or whether you're going to get off scot-free.
I'm sure it makes it difficult for coaches who are trying to get their players to go hard at the ball.
Yeah, but I gotta tell you, I don't know if Scott would have enjoyed that bump that much. There was he hit him. There was probably he wouldn't have been too disappointed that he took Goddard out, but the guy wasn't even in play. We know Scott's a bit of a...
He was within 5 metres of the ball.
Yeah, but
Kelly's teammate was about to pick the ball up. Effectively, he was shepherding him out of the contest.
I thought it was a bit weak.
Look, he hit him hard. Goddard got straight back up. It wasn't that bad.
Well, I think maybe I'm a little pissed off this week because Nathan Wright, who's one of the youngsters I've been really excited about for the Saints this year, got done by Eddie.
And that's just a hit for no reason. There
was no reason to do it.
It was just
no reason to do it. But I think we want to maintain the bump. I think that's true. And the one that Yates executed on Brereton in the '89 Grand Final probably still hurts Jono's ribs to this day.
No, we won the Grand Final.
But as long as I don't get him in the head, I think even incidental content
I just think the scoring system it
needs adjustment.
It needs adjustment, or get rid of it altogether. I mean, they got rid of the tribunal because lots of petty cases were going up before the tribunal, and it was wasting a lot of people's time every week. The point system was brought in to introduce that and remove the inconsistencies that were there as a result and streamline the process. But actually, it's created more confusion, it's created more inconsistencies, and I think at the end of the season they need to review.
Is the answer to change it again? Because that's just going to keep
us
on.
We want to evolve the game. We want to keep improving the game of AFL. We want to make sure that the good players are on the park every week. They keep adjusting the rules to try and minimise injuries, slow down the game, speed up the game. I mean, they're doing everything that they can everywhere else, but they've left this tribunal in place, which is every year, every week, just about there's some sort of controversy.
I don't know if there's a solution here.
And I think it's working for them to a large extent.
Yeah,
I think they like the way it is now.
Yeah, agreed. The issue is our game is so interpretive.
Okay.
To make a decision, you and I see exactly the same decision in different ways.
Answer me this question. If Kelly gets rubbed out, should Thomas have been rubbed out?
Yes.
And Michael?
Yeah, probably.
Exactly.
We agree.
So it's not working. In its current form, it's not working.
Okay. Fine. I possibly agree on the bump. Now, a big issue here, okay, now, obviously I barrack for Melbourne, so I'll just declare that up front, but I think this is one of the most important clubs in the AFL. It's the founding club, if you want to call it that. It's got the name of the most important city in AFL to this day. Sorry to disappoint everyone else that's outside of Melbourne.
We love you, interstate listeners.
Now, they're going through an absolute crisis. I think they've just made poor decision after poor decision for a decade, if not more, and this week they've managed to find a new low in a season of lows, in a season where they've been absolutely hammered, they've lost games just disgracefully with absolutely no passion, and now they've lost by 10 goals to Gold Coast, who wasn't around a few years ago. So, do you have a solution? Does anyone here have a solution for Melbourne?
Well, I think we can probably start with the fact that what was left unsaid in Michael's little intro was that he brought us back to the 2009 Richmond-Melbourne games just before the podcast got started, where Melbourne tanked, got extra picks. We're looking like they're in the same position as Richmond, and yet 4 years later, one club's moving on up and the other one stayed in the same position. So it's been a very disappointing, probably 5 or 6 years now, and I agree with you that they're a foundation club, but I really think that there is an issue with the club greats not taking responsibility. You see the likes of Gary Lyon, David Schwartz, they talk a lot in the media. They were part of the, well, at least I believe Lyon was part of the panel to appoint the coach, and yet you see them step away from taking any responsibility for the club. I think they need to have more Melbourne people involved that have been part of a successful era. I think they need to restructure the whole club in general, and it needs to be a ground-up rebuild. It's clear that what Neil is doing isn't working. They're not playing to a game plan, and I think they need the heart and soul of the club to come back, a la Jimmy Stones. And
just want to tell you, I'm not sure if you know, but they haven't been winning since the 60s. How many people are left that still remember what it was like to play football?
I don't think you need to win a premiership to be considered successful. I would say that the Saints between 2004, let's say, and 2010 had a good era. I would be happy with any of those guys coming back in 20 years' time and taking the reins. Jono?
Yeah, look, I think you've gone close to touching on my point, which I think is the culture of the club. I always, being a Hawthorn supporter, think back to when Clarkson came into the club and we were down the bottom of the ladder, we were playing poor football, losing lots of games. Clarkson came in with a game plan, which for the first 2 years a lot of people questioned.
They haven't got a game plan.
Lots of people questioned Clarkson's game plan. There was high handballs, there was fast movement of the ball, trying to pick their way through zones, these sorts of things, and everyone thought he was an idiot. 4 years into his tenure, he won a premiership, and go with Melbourne. Dean Bailey, he was at the club for 4 years. Now, allegedly there was some sort of potential manipulation of team positioning and structures, which resulted in losses and additional draft picks. But instead of taking the Hawthorn model, which was building a game plan and a culture of winning, Melbourne built a game plan and a structure and a culture around losing or not performing to your best. And that seeps through every aspect of the club when that happens, because it becomes acceptable then to lose games of football because there's a supposed benefit at the end of it. And I think that at the end of the day, I think they need a clean out at the top. I think the CEO, he stood down. You've got an interim CEO. I think you need somebody strong in that position, and I think you need somebody strong like a Paul Roos. I know he's come out and he said no, he's not gonna come and coach Melbourne, but I think somebody like a Paul Roos who can really instill a strong culture like what he did in Sydney at the Melbourne Football Club will take them a long way. I heard on the radio recently someone talking about when Ken Hinkley went to Port Adelaide, and the first training session they did a 2K time trial, and then they did a skills session. And 10 minutes into the skills session, they were fumbling around a little bit, fumbling the ball, and Ken Hinkley told everyone to stop, put the footies down, and told them pretty much, I don't care if this is the first session back, your skills aren't good enough, and made them all do a 2K time trial again. Now, he's come in straight away and held everyone to account and held everyone to a certain level of standards. And you look at the football that they're playing compared to the football that Melbourne's playing, and they were finished in a similar position at the end of last year.
But John,
massive difference.
Let me ask you this: Do you think there's any amount of money that will take Paul Roos to come to Melbourne? Michael, do you think?
I don't
would
know
you take
who would
job?
want that job. I honestly don't know who would want that job.
I would love to coach an AFL club. I don't think I'd want to coach the Demons.
You just look at Neil and you feel so sorry for him after every press conference. Yep. The poor guy's red in the face. He looks like his heart's about to pop out. And if I was his cardiac surgeon, I'd be a bit worried.
Michael, let me ask you one more question.
I'm sure he's appointed one already.
Michael, let me ask you one more question. what do you think of the development of the young players at the club? Because you see what they've done to Jack.
It's a disgrace, and that touches on my point. What I was going to say, I completely agree with Jono that in terms of tanking, I always hated it. And when people said, well, you'd be stupid not to try and lose that last game to get the extra pick, I completely agree. It's just not on. You can't have a culture where it's acceptable to lose any game. Your supporters are there, and you need to work as hard as you can for them. But the second point is obviously bringing up new players. They went through a stage where they got a bit cocky about their upcoming list, so they just cleaned out all the older players. Guys like James McDonald, who was captain of the club, who was still getting 35 touches a game, not the best team. Guys like Cam Bruce got moved on, Uze got sent off.
He got retired, basically.
Yeah, got retired, but he didn't want to go. Yeah. But White got moved on. All these guys. Now, what that means is you've got no on-field leadership
and look
at
at
all.
a couple of guys that are still playing. Brent Maloney and he's getting nearly 30 touches a week for Brisbane.
Absolutely.
And what's his name at Carlton?
Well, the Rats are jumping off the sinking ship, unfortunately.
I'm sure Rivers is loving playing the first 5 games of his season and just winning every single one of them. He's probably never experienced that his entire career at Melbourne. And he's loving it right now.
He's played in that many winning games the last 2 years at Melbourne.
I'm sure he's already learnt the Geelong song after, probably forgot the Melbourne one already. He's only sung that a few times. So, on-field leadership is really important. So you can't just have a team of 18-year-olds. You need to actually trade and get... So, clubs like Greater Western Sydney and Gold Coast have realised that from day one. So they haven't gone after just purely kids. Yeah. They've got guys like Ablett and...
Callum Ward. Callum Ward, Broad.
The list of them, and all these guys that are on-field leaders, they got one in every line, so that these young kids are learning and developing as they go. That just doesn't exist in Melbourne. These kids are getting absolutely hammered, and when they start to get hammered, you can just see that they drop their heads, and there's no one to look to.
Yeah. Look, I got to say, I don't think they'll let them die, but hard decisions have to be made.
All right, boys. Next week, another big week. Who are we tipping? Game 1, we've got...
West Coast against North.
West Coast against North, what do you think?
Jono?
Yeah, I'm going to take West Coast, just the head-to-head bet.
Yeah, I think that's 2 of us for the head-to-head. I think West Coast is going to be a little bit too strong in this one. They're getting some good players back. Waters is coming back. And with Cox and net new in Iraq, it's... hard to see how North Melbourne will get enough ball out of centre to win that game. I'm going West Coast head-to-head.
Okay, I disagree. I got North Melbourne, but with 16 points on board. So that gives me $2.10. So hopefully, I think North is on the way up. They've had the big breakthrough win after having to have a hard start to the season. I think they can do a bit here.
Okay.
Essendon Brisbane Lions.
There's not a lot of value in this match, and after taking Essendon at the line against GWS the other week and them barely getting the 40 plus, I'm taking Essendon at plus 40 against Brisbane. I don't think Hurdy will let another performance like what happened against GWS occur. I think Essendon too strong, and I think the plus 40 is a value bet there.
Interesting one, just to break in, I've got exactly the same thing.
I think all 3 of us have got that. I think they're going to be savage this week. John is right, there's no value here, but at least with 40 plus you get some money.
Alright, big clash against, we've got Hawthorn and GWS. That could be a 50-50 match right there.
Yeah, look, I'm not happy about the way the odds have occurred here. The line started out at 95.5, which I thought was an alright bet, but it's already shifted to 101.5, which is, which is a long way out. But it's about the only value that you'll get on this game at all. So I'm gonna have a crack at the line at 101.
Jono, question for you for the coming week: how many is Buddy going to kick?
If the rest of the season's anything to go by, they'll kick 1 or 2.
Well, I brought Buddy into my Supercoach team this week, so I'm expecting him to kick 13 or 14 based on Plugger Lynch's efforts against Greater Western Sydney last week. Still can't believe he kicked 10 goals. I'm actually taking Hawks by more than 105.5. I actually don't want to make this bet. I feel terrible about this already because I think they're going to take it easy and probably relax when they're quite a long way up. But I'm going Hawthorn 105.
Which is good because I've got the exact opposite. So I've got GWS plus 100. So I'm hoping that after Hawthorn gets 70 or 80 points ahead, they start to relax and think about next week and possibly throw a few rotations and try some new things. And
I don't have much to worry about next week either.
That's true. You've got a couple of easy
Or the
ones.
week after.
I don't know. We'll get to it, but I think we're underselling Gold Coast a little.
Which reminds me that there's that knockout competition that Sporting Bet is running. It's still 14,000 people active, and that's because there hasn't been a single massive upset. And it's we've got really three teams that are lemons at the moment. Gold Coast is doing all right, but you've still got GWS and Melbourne, who are predictably not going to really beat anyone.
Bulldogs as well.
Bulldogs
Joe,
as well.
what I am hoping though is GWS has beaten both your teams, the Saints and Melbourne this year. That trend doesn't continue in this room.
Gold Coast.
And the Gold Coast beat the
Hawkers
Hawthorn next week.
You can just see an Ablet special against the Hawks. You know it's coming.
But I think out of those 13,000 people that are left, 12,500 are going to pick Hawthorn this week, which is ridiculous. And the one brave person that picks GWS will be hoping the opposite happens and he wins up front. So, next game, Gold Coast, Western Bulldogs, Jared Healy, you got anything to say about that?
No, look, I think I'm going to take Gold Coast at 1 to 39 points in this game.
I'm going actually Bulldogs head to head. I think they've gone with a more experienced lineup this week. Goods is coming back. They've brought Cross back into the 18. I don't know how much you can read into Gold Coast victory against Melbourne. So I'm taking Bulldogs head to head.
I just think Gold Coast are developing a relatively strong game at home. They've already beaten the Saints there this year. I think the Doggies are playing with a bit more heart than what Melbourne are, but the travel, I should say, up there, it's going to be relatively humid. I just think I think the Gold Coast might just get this one, which is why I'm taking the 1 to 39.
Yeah, I've got the same thing as Vava. I think Bulldogs are a great value at $2.35 or whatever they're paying, so I would definitely go Bulldogs. I think they've got a couple of young kids that are up and coming footballers as well.
Jake Stringer looks a beauty.
Alright, next game. You got it?
Sydney Freo.
Sydney Freo, I'm taking again 1 to 39 points, this time on Sydney. I think Ross Lyon coach teams, it's always a close game. But I just think Sydney will be slightly too strong at home, and after losing to the Hawks last week, will be hungry for a win. Even though Fremantle's got a couple of good ins this week.
Yeah, I'm going Sydney head to head as just because of home ground advantage. I think after the last two Hawthorn, they're due for a rebound. I think they're gonna come out and put a bit of a stomp on.
All right, I reckon Freo and Sydney are going to play out a low-scoring game, so I'm going for Freo plus 13. I think, and not to mention Fremantle's had some pretty close ones this season,
True.
so I think with an extra 13 points, they've got a big chance of winning. Collingwood Geelong, massive game.
Yeah, look, Thomas out, announced an injury today. They're saying 2 weeks. There's rumours that it could be longer. Shaw out with suspension as well. I just think Geelong are going to be way too strong again. Taking Geelong at the line of 20.5.
I think Collingwood's got the most front-running midfield in the history of the game potentially. A lot of it's fool's gold. I think Pendlebury's an absolute gun. I don't know if one works hard enough the other way. They're lacking a bit of X factor. I'm not sure that Buckley is that great a coach, and Geelong is just a better team. I'm going Geelong 1 to 39 just because the Collingwood overall class through some of their stars will keep them closer, but you can't see Collingwood winning this one.
Alright, I'm going the other way again, so I can tell you that this round could...
Separate the men from the boys?
Exactly. I've got Collingwood plus 15, and I think they've still got a little bit to offer.
You're doing a lot of the
Plus they've
bets.
got... yes, that's right.
Do you see some value there in these bets?
I think so. I'm looking for some close ones this week.
Fair enough.
So next game, Carlton Port Adelaide.
Yeah, I've taken Carlton here at the extended line of 21.5. I think if Carlton are going to win this game, it'll be by at least 4 goals. So I think the extended line 21.5 presents some real good value.
I gotta tell you, I think Mick Malthouse will have torn shreds of Jared Waite last week for getting suspended. He's going to be absolutely savage to the team on the track. I think they're going to spank Port Adelaide. I've gone Carlton 40 plus. If I could go a bit more, I would. I think Port have done well early in the season, but Carlton have got something to prove.
Okay, for the 10th time I'm going the other way. Port head to head. Now that's based on a couple of big outs for Carlton. Yes, they do have a couple of big ins as well, but they got a couple of big outs. Yaron Betts gone. Changes the whole forward structure quite a bit. Not to mention, I think Port is a completely different team this year. We've talked about them as well. Richmond Melbourne, another close one.
Yeah, taking look, tough pick in this game. I'm taking Richmond at the 40 plus. I think I think they should easily cover that, but the other line options are a bit too much of a lottery for my liking. So Richmond at the 40 plus.
Yeah, they've really come on this year. I think Martin's been great. They've got much better results out of Rewalt in terms of just overall play. I think the media has been a bit harsh on him, but I think he's been pretty good this year. And Melbourne are shocking. It's just disappointing, as we've discussed before. I'm going Richmond 40 plus as well. I can't see any value anywhere else.
Okay, I'm going to stick to my trajectory and go for Melbourne plus 70.
You really think they can get within 71 points of Richmond?
I'm not sure. I'm hoping they can kick at least 5 goals, which means Richmond has to get 100. Alright?
Jono, yeah. Does that strike fear into your betting heart? Richmond having to get 100 against the mighty Melbourne defence?
No.
Alright, last one. Adelaide at home to St Kilda.
I have to say, tough again. It's the Saints. I figure it's my go. It's the Saints. My beloved Saints. Tipped against them last week. Going to tip them against them this week as well, which breaks my heart. I'm going Adelaide head to head. Dangerfield is far too good. I don't know if we've got an answer for Lynch, who will kick probably 15 against his old side. Adelaide head to head.
Yeah, look, same. Adelaide head to head. Be a close game. Adelaide aren't showing the form that they had last season. St Kilda had a good win, but faded late. I just think Adelaide probably too strong at home. If it was in Melbourne, I'd probably go the other way. But I think Adelaide, it'll in Adelaide.
Okay. For the last time, I'm breaking the other way. I reckon St Kilda had a really important win last week. That'll help them bond as a team and hopefully overcome Adelaide, who I don't think this season is as good as they were last season. Yes, they won by 150 goals last week, but this is a totally different scenario, different game, and a real team that they're coming up against. So that's the end of the tipping. I think this round, I've picked everything differently to you guys, so I'm either going to be first or last, I feel. But thank you very much for joining. Any final comments, gentlemen?
No, look, I think last round presented some good games, much better than the week before when I was able to tip 9. I think there was a lot of one-sided games that week. This week it's a little more even, some really good games. Geelong, Collingwood, Fremantle, Sydney, West Coast North should be a good one. And really hoping that that Buddy can can potentially be leading the Coleman at the end of this round.
Couldn't agree with Jono more. Hopefully Buddy is leading the Coleman. My Supercoach team spanks whoever I play against, and all is right with the world.
So the big question is, will Buddy kick more goals than the entire Greater Western Sydney team? All right, thank you for joining us.
There's a good chance. I think you should track down and find out if you can get some odds on that and put it up on the website.
We absolutely can. So on the website we'll have the tips for today, along with the odds and the ladder from last week. So tune in next week when we'll go through what really happened.